It's time to cook. Welcome back to Phil Always Wins. Today we are going to be breaking down the full card of UFC 329, Conor McGregor taking on Max Holloway. And to kick off the night, we have an absolute banger of a fight between Alessandro Costa and Cody Durden, where I think that Alessandro Costa is going to get the win. Costa is one of my favorite prospects for this division, and he's actually made me money on 2 separate occasions. And in this fight, he's actually priced fairly well at times 1.4. Now, the reason he is priced so well is because Durden was supposed to fight Ode Osborne, and Costa is coming into this fight on a week's notice, but he's the overall better fighter in this matchup. UFC casuals such as myself will deem Costa as an elite striker with slick boxing because he mixes in shots to the body and head with precision and power. But he's actually a phenomenal grappler, and he's very live to find the submission if Durden shoots for takedowns, and that's the main problem for Durden. Even if this fight plays out where Durden fights his best fight, which is either in the clinch or on the ground, Costa still has dangerous submission threats, and he also has good takedown defense. On the feet, Durden can be dangerous early because he throws absolute haymakers, and it only takes one to land to find the knockout, but he slows down tremendously the longer the fight goes. Costa is a patient and precise striker, and we've actually seen his striking heavily improve over his last few UFC fights, and I don't think that he's going to get into wild exchanges with Durden early on in the fight. I trust Costa's fight IQ to fight a very smart fight and try and control the pace early, and he's going to pick Durden apart until he breaks down, and I reckon he finds a finish in round 3. Next up, we have a middleweight bout between Gandra and Zachary Reese, where initially I was going with Zachary Reese, but I switched over to Gandra. Gandra is still quite new to the UFC with only 1 fight, which was basically a setup from the UFC for him to get a knockout highlight reel, but nonetheless, he's still a dangerous prospect. I think this is a solid test for Gandra, but what makes me favor him in this matchup is their clash of fighting styles. Zachary Reese is pretty tall for the division, and he likes to use his reach advantage to pick his shots from the outside and manage his distance with his kicks. Gandra, on the other hand, is a highly aggressive fighter from the opening bell with tremendous power, and we've seen Reese crumble under heavy pressure before. Reese is more of a patient fighter that likes to fight at a constant pace throughout all 3 rounds, but when he's forced to fight an aggressive fight, that's when he gets too irresponsible with his guard and tends to drop his hands. And if he does that against a power puncher like Gandra, then Reese is going to get knocked out. Reese's biggest advantage in this fight is his UFC experience and his ability to threaten submissions, because Gandra's grappling is still untested, and we also haven't seen him go all 3 rounds against a proper UFC level fighter. And so I think the longer this fight goes, the more it favors Reese, but I reckon that Gandra's aggression and explosiveness is going to grant him the early knockout in round 1. Next up, we have a middleweight bout between Damian Pinas and Cesar Almeida, where I think that Damian Pinas is going to get the win. The reason I think that Pinas is going to win this fight is due to his speed advantage on the feet and his overall aggression. Pinas is usually the aggressor who's pressing forward and forcing his opponents to fight at his pace. His pressure forces his opponents to fight against the cage, which is when Pinas mixes in shots to the body and head and usually finds the knockout. This is a match made in heaven for Pinas because although Almeida is a technical kickboxer, he has a lot of holes in his game. Almeida is dangerous because he does have real power, but he's almost too patient for his own good, and he throws at a very low output. He usually throws 1 to 2 shots at a time, and he relies completely on landing that one big counter to change the fight. The problem is that he's very slow and telegraphed, and I think Pinas will be able to see every shot coming as long as he doesn't get too reckless in the pocket. Almeida has also been dropped badly in a lot of his fights, even the ones that he's won, and that's mainly due to the fact that he doesn't move his head all too much, and against a fighter who's faster and more explosive than him, I think that those defensive flaws will allow Pinas to find a knockout in round 2. Next up, we have a women's flyweight fight between Wang and Tracy Cortez, where I'm going to be favoring Wang to get the win. There's a clear game plan for both of these fighters. Wang is a phenomenal kickboxer who's very light on the feet, and she'll want to keep this fight standing. It's very rare for a woman fighter to hold a lot of power, and although Wang only has 2 knockouts on her record, you can see that she generates a lot of power. She's also very quick with her combinations, and her footwork makes her very hard to get hit cleanly. She's currently 9-1, and she even has a win over the current champ, Valentina Shevchenko, back in 2015 when they fought a kickboxing match. Now, Tracy isn't the worst striker, and she actually has decent boxing when she's fighting in the pocket, but her shots aren't as quick or effective as Wang's, and she'll be looking to get this fight to the ground as soon as possible. On paper, Tracy looks like the better fighter because she's able to mix in the grappling with her strikes, and she has won 6 of her 8 UFC fights. But the problem is that she isn't the most dangerous grappler, and I think she may have a hard time getting this fight to the ground. Once she gets the fight to the ground, she usually does do well, but she struggles getting takedowns and Wang has good takedown defense. Tracy is going to try and let Wang come out aggressive, then shoot for a takedown when she overswings, but I think that Wang knows the takedown threat is there and she'll fight a more calculated fight than a reckless fight. I reckon that Wang's speed and precision is going to allow her to land the bigger shots over 15 minutes and she'll win a unanimous decision. Next up, we have a featherweight fight between Luke Riley and Kai Kamaka, and this is going to be a striker's delight because both of these fighters are more than happy to keep the fight standing, but I'm favoring Luke Riley to win this fight because he's the faster and more sharper striker. Riley has very good footwork and he does a good job of bouncing in and out of range, which makes it very hard to land clean shots on him. He's going to make Kamaka miss a lot before firing back with clean counter shots, and he's not the type of fighter who needs to force a brawl to be effective. He can stay composed, pick his moments, and slowly start taking over the fight with his speed and precision. He's also training with high-level fighters like Paddy Pimblett, so I trust that he's constantly getting good rounds in and improving his overall game. Now, Kamaka is definitely a veteran of the sport and he's been around good competition for a long time. He was cut by the UFC back in 2021, but he worked his way back and won his return fight back in April of 2026, so you have to respect the experience and toughness that he brings in this matchup. Kamaka is pretty durable and he's capable of trading shots and going to war on the feet, but he'll have to try and bring this fight to the clinch or to the ground because that's where we've seen Riley struggle and start to slow down. But at the end of the day, I think it's going to be a pure striking fight, and I trust Riley's speed and power to land the more damaging shots over 15 minutes and win a unanimous decision. Next up, we have a bantamweight fight between Adrian Yanez and Cody Garbrandt, where I think that Cody Garbrandt is going to get the win. Cody Garbrandt is a major underdog for this fight, and he's currently sitting at a ×4 on the money line, but I think that this fight is closer than the odds suggest. The former champ has a lot of UFC experience, and he's a phenomenal boxer that's known for his speedy combinations. He's probably one of the quickest punchers in the division, but the downside is that although he usually has a very successful round 1, he starts to get hesitant and slows down as the fight progresses. It's not that he doesn't have the stamina to keep up with the pace of the fight, but rather that he prefers to fight a safe fight and not take too many risks, which is when his opponents are usually able to start outlanding him and take over the fight. Now, I do think that Yanez is the favorite to win this fight because he's the younger and hungrier fighter. Yanez was on a 5-fight winning streak before getting knocked out by Rob Font back in 2023, and to be honest, he hasn't fought with the same aggression ever since then. He came back after a 2-year break and got a draw with Ricky Simon, but if we're being real here, he definitely won that fight. I think that he's still very hungry in proving that he's still a dangerous knockout artist, and that hunger is something that Garbrandt doesn't seem to have anymore. But this is going to be a pure striking matchup between two elite strikers, and we've seen Yanez get finished or hurt badly on the feet a few times, and we've also seen Garbrandt hurt his opponents a few times in round 1, and so I think that Garbrandt is going to find the knockout in round 1. Next up, we have a heavyweight fight between two debutees in Gable Stevenson and Elisha Ellison, where I think that Stevenson is going to get the win. This is a fight where although I'm favoring Gable to get the win, I'm not going to put money on it because Gable is a -3,333 favorite, which is the biggest favorite on the card and actually the biggest favorite in UFC history. He's only got 3 MMA fights in his entire career, but he fights like he's been fighting his entire life, and he's already going to be making his UFC debut this Saturday, which speaks to how much hype there is behind his name. He's a natural athlete, and given that he's the 2020 Olympic freestyling wrestling gold medalist, I think his game plan is quite obvious. He'll want to go in there, shoot for a takedown, and finish this fight via ground and pound, which is exactly how Ellison lost his last fight. Ellison does have more MMA experience, with all 5 of his wins coming by way of knockout in round 1, and to be fair, he's coming off a loss to a very talented prospect in Brando Perisic, who knocked him down and finished him via ground and pound. But Ellison is just too patient on the feet, and I don't think that he'll get a chance to get going with his punches because Gable is a very aggressive wrestler from the get-go, and it's almost a guarantee that he'll get a takedown. If not, then Gable also has tremendous power on the feet, and I think one way or another, Gable is going to find an early knockout in round 1. Next up, we have a light heavyweight bout between Robert Whitaker and Nikita Krylov, where I think that Whitaker is going to get the win. This is a perfect bounce back opportunity for Robert Whitaker after taking 2 consecutive losses to Khamzat Chimaev and RDR. Whitaker is definitely not in his prime anymore, but there's no doubt that he's still a talented striker. He does a good job of blitzing in with quick combinations, landing his shots and exiting before his opponents have a chance to fire back cleanly. He's a highly experienced Korean striker who's only really lost to the best fighters in the division, and he should have no problem winning this fight. Krylov is pretty tall for the division, standing at 6'3", and he finds success in fights when he uses his reach advantage to control the range of the fight and pick his shots from the outside. He could make this fight competitive by staying on the outside the entire time and try to force Whitaker to take some risk as he tries to close the distance, but for some reason, Krylov loves to burst in recklessly, and in doing so, he leaves his hands very low, which will allow Whitaker to land his signature right hook. Now, both of these fighters have shown durability issues recently, so I wouldn't be surprised if someone gets chinned, but I trust Whitaker's fight IQ and UFC experience to fight a safe fight throughout all 3 rounds and win a unanimous decision. Just like that, we are on the main card of the evening where we have King Green taking on Terrance McKinney, and I think that King Green is gonna get the win. This is an absolute banger of a fight to kick off the main card, and it's almost a guarantee that someone's going to get finished in this fight. Almost all of Terrance McKinney's fights have ended in round 1, and he just loves to come out guns blazing. His aggression is the reason he wins all of his fights, because his opponents can't deal with that constant pressure. But the downside is that McKinney uses all of his energy in the first 3 minutes of the fight, and he tends to gas out afterwards, and if Green can survive the early storm, then he's going to be the one to find the finish. King Green is a highly experienced fighter, and although he's been knocked out badly a few times, all of his losses have come to ranked opponents like Islam Makhachev, Marusius Houfi, Paddy Pimblett, and Jalen Turner. But the reason that Green is the underdog in this fight is because he loves to fight with his hands completely down, and he relies completely on his footwork and head movement to get out of danger. And against a highly aggressive and reckless opponent like McKinney, you have to have your hands up, because more than likely McKinney will land something clean that could really hurt Green. But I'm going to trust Green's experience to be able to survive the first few minutes of the fight, then start to take over and find a finish in round 2. Next up, we have a flyweight bout between Loiner Kavanagh taking on Brandon Royval, where I'm taking Kavanagh to get the win. Kavanagh is one of my favorite prospects in the division because he's so technical yet fluid in the striking department. His boxing is off the charts, and what makes him very dangerous is his quick counterattacks. He uses his head movement to avoid getting hit, and I really like that he knows when to patiently pick his shots and when to explode and hurt his opponents. Despite only having 4 knockouts on his record, he actually does have underrated power because he throws with his hips, and he could definitely find the knockout in this fight. Now, Royval is a pretty lanky fighter that usually has a reach advantage, and he likes to use his long jab to set up his combinations and powerful body kicks. He usually sticks his jab out 2 to 4 times before unleashing his combinations, and he's able to fight a technical brawl at a very high pace for all 3 rounds. He's also the more experienced fighter, having fought dangerous competition like Pantoja, Tatsuro Taira, and Joshua Van, but to be honest, Kavanagh seems like the more composed fighter in the octagon. It's going to be a close striking fight, and given that both of these fighters are pretty durable, I think it's going to go the distance in favor of Kavanagh. Next up, we have a bantamweight fight between 2 of my favorite fighters in the division. We have Mario Bautista taking on Corey Sandhagen, where I think that Sandhagen's gonna get the win. This is a rematch fight between 2 solid ranked opponents, and their first fight was way back in 2019, where Sandhagen landed a flush knee to hurt Bautista badly before finding an armbar to finish the fight. Now, Sandhagen is the better striker in this matchup. He puts together fast combinations on the feet, and he's able to create attacking angles that allow him to land clean strikes. Not only is he agile, but he's also creative with his striking, and if Bautista decides to stand and strike, then Sandhagen is going to slowly pick him apart until he finds the knockout. Now, Bautista isn't a bad striker himself, but he'll need to mix in the takedowns because he's the better grappler and better submission artist, and he needs to get Sandhagen thinking of the takedowns so he can close the distance with more ease and actually land some big shots. But Sandhagen has already had 3 camps in a row preparing for dangerous wrestlers slash grapplers like Umar Nurmagomedov, Figgy Figueiredo, and most recently Merab. He's shown improvement in his wrestling capabilities, and I don't think that Bautista will be able to get this fight grounded. And so I think that Sandhagen will be able to land the cleaner and more damaging shots on the feet and find a TKO win via ground and pound in round 2. Just like that, we are on the co-main event of the evening where we have a lightweight bout between Paddy Pimblett and Benoit Saint-Denis, where I'm taking the underdog Paddy Pimblett to get the win. Now, I do think that Paddy Pimblett is the better striker in this matchup, but they both have one bad habit on the feet. Paddy doesn't really move his head in the striking exchanges, which makes him very hittable on the feet, and Benoit tends to fight with his hands pretty low, which also makes him very hittable. Benoit tends to be the aggressor in his fights because he likes to keep coming forward and force takedowns once he gets his opponents against the cage. But the thing is, he gets very reckless while trying to put on some pressure, and that's when I think that Paddy's going to land something big. The main concern for Benoit is his durability. Not many people talk about this, but Benoit gets hurt fairly easily in his fights, and if they both start getting wild, I trust Paddy's chin more than Benoit's. Now Benoit does have a clear grappling advantage, and he fights his best fight when he can secure mount and land some heavy ground and pound. But almost all of his takedown attempts in his last fight against Dan Hooker were pretty telegraphed, and I think that Paddy Pimblett's athleticism and grappling capabilities will be enough to stop the takedowns and keep this fight standing. And so I think that Paddy is going to hurt Benoit badly when he recklessly comes forward, and he'll find a knockout in round 2. And just like that, we are in the main event of the evening, where we have a welterweight bout between Max Holloway and Conor McGregor, where obviously I'm taking Max Holloway to get the win. As everyone knows, these two have actually fought before back in 2013 when McGregor was still in his prime, and McGregor dominated the fight on the feet and won a unanimous decision. In that fight, we saw Holloway fight a very hesitant fight because he just couldn't break down Conor's unique fighting style. He struggled to time his entries and had a hard time trying to catch him. But Holloway was very young, and he's improved heavily since then, and he's been the significantly more active fighter, fighting all the top contenders of the division, while Conor hasn't fought in 5 years. Max fights his best fight when he's touching his opponents with volume, mixing in shots to the head and body, and forcing them to fight at a pace that they can't keep up with. Now Conor's biggest advantage is obviously his timing and power. He's very good at reading entries, pulling back, and firing the straight left hand as his opponents come in. If Max gets too aggressive early on in the fight and starts entering without setting anything up, then Conor can definitely catch him. Conor doesn't want to turn this fight into a high volume fight where Max is constantly in his face. He needs to slow down the pace, land the bigger shots early, and make Holloway respect his power. But I just can't trust Conor to fight the way that he used to because he's been out for so long, and now he's coming in to fight a 5-round fight, and I'm not sure that his gas tank is there anymore. So I think that Holloway is going to do what he always does, and he's going to outland McGregor throughout all 5 rounds and win a unanimous decision. So that's going to do it for my full card breakdown. Let me know in the comments what you guys think, and don't forget to follow me on Instagram to be the first to know about my weekly UFC betting tips. Peace.